And we are back. We're at City Motorsport Park for the first time in more than 6 months after the injury where I got impaled in the knee from the RS660. So this event is the Bracket Racing / Come and Try event that St. George is running. The Come and Try event is for ride day riders potentially moving into racing, and the brackets is, as it says in the name, speed or lap time brackets for competitors. So we are in the pretty much the slowest bracket of time because it's been so long off the bike. We're coming back from injury and we just kind of wanted to ease back into it. So what we have here is we're out in qualifying. As you may hear, and as some of you may have seen from some of our other posts, we're back on the Suzuki SV650 for this event. We did have the Aprilia RS660 that we started racing at the end of 2023 and the beginning of 2024. That's the bike that I had the crash on that gave me a big injury, and I've since decided to return to our beloved Suzuki's. So we're out on the Gen3 SV650 Supertwin. For this event we have the 677 motor back in the bike after a few issues in a previous round. You can actually see a video about us doing an engine swap overnight for that one. This is qualifying. We waited a little while for most of the grid to clear, so I could try to get clear laps on the bike. Not only are we testing the bike with the 677 engine back in it, but also it's been 6 months since I have been on track. I've been out to the track once to watch David race, where he was very, very successful. And this is my first time back out on a track bike. So shaking the bike down, shaking myself down, going into the first flying lap, and we discover the first of what's going to be a recurring issue for myself all night, and that is downshifting. So what happened just here is I went to change down the 3 gears that I normally would. The SV is set up slightly differently to the Aprilia, and I kind of had that in my mind still. And also we discovered that my body just isn't as flexible or up to speed as it had been previous to the crash. And we also then ended up discovering an issue with the shift knuckles. So for this session we just went out, continued to do laps. I slowly eased myself back into it. The aim for me for the entire event was to hopefully lap under a 1 minute 50. I said to myself, look, if I get under a 1 minute 50, I'm going to be happy with that, considering I had spent so long off the bike, recovering from a pretty significant knee injury, where literally I was impaled, broken femur, tib fib, broken ankle, and elbow injury. So for me, this one was just easing back into it. I'm not sure if that classifies as easing back into it, as I passed David and 2 of our other friends on 300s up the back straight. And eventually I got a qualifying lap time with about a 1 minute 47. So I was pretty happy with that to beat a 150 in the first session back. I was very, very happy. Normally I'd just go out, try to get a fast lap in, save the tyres and pit again. But for this event, I need to get myself back up to speed, back up to spec, try to ease myself back into the bike. So I just stayed out for the full session. Race 1 for brackets. So as I mentioned before, bracket racing is brackets for time, so lap time, meaning we have multiple capacities of bike on the one grid. We qualified in 12th, which I'm actually pretty stoked about. There's a bunch of 1000s and a bunch of 600s in front of us. Unfortunately, because I've been out of racing for so long, you see I'm going to absolutely fluff the start here. I didn't hit it as hard as I possibly could have, and I got swamped off the line. Run through turn 1 isn't too bad. Coming into turn 2, we got David there in front of us. It was actually a bit concerning for myself. Not concerning, it's probably not the right word. I was actually a bit trepidatious going into turn 2 for the first time on the brakes. One, I knew I was having issues with shifting, which we weren't able to resolve between Q and race 1. And then just being back in the melee of racing, I was kind of a bit nervous. Once we filed through there, kind of business as usual. You can see I've jumped straight in behind David on his Yamaha MTR07. David's taking a nice defensive line there. He said to us afterwards he was pretty certain that it was going to be right up his clacker, and I guess he wasn't wrong. Throughout the races, you'll be able to pick up that my first couple of laps aren't too bad. You can see that I'm pushing pretty hard, pushing pretty hard and pretty clean. The lines are not too bad. The gear shifts aren't too bad, but eventually I start to tire out. Oof. First lap of the race and already throwing a very hard move on David. I always have loved that flip-flop between turns 10 and 11. And yeah, I think I took David by surprise quite a lot, sending it on him on the first lap. You might be able to hear on the audio here, David's right beside us, and there he comes through turn 1. So David's learnt a bunch of lessons and has gotten quite a lot faster, so it's actually really awesome that he slipstreamed me, passed me on the straight, and then held it through turn 1. I've tried to pass him there into turn 2, that's my strong suit, place that I pass quite regularly, but I got a little bit of target fixation on that rider that was running wide. David took full advantage, no prisoners, and cut up the inside of me. I believe the bike that's in front of us there is actually a Yamaha R1 or an R6. Again, that's the nature of bracket racing. You have multiple skill sets, multiple bike capacities and power outputs, all doing about the same lap time, so everyone makes it quite differently. You can see David and I are a bit faster in the corners, and then when it gets to the straights or up the hills, those on the big bikes push a gap into us. There goes Adam Terry on his KTM. He actually started from the back of the grid. He's just come past us both. Adam spooked David a little bit there, going up the inside, and knowing me, turn 10 and 11, I've gone around the outside of David. Really put the wheelies up in. Adam's actually on a KTM 890 Duke, naked bike. He's actually been doing pretty well lately, so it's awesome to see him. There's an interesting line from an R1 there, really going into the grass into turn 1. You can hear there on my entry into turn 2, I'm not as fast or sharp on the gears as I would be normally, especially on this bike as well. Again, here you can see that corner speed difference between myself on the SV and this fella on his R1. And then especially here off turn 6, about the same mid-corner speed, and he just hoofs up the hill. Now something that you might note there, myself passing under the bridge going over the hill at corporate, I'm losing so much time there. I'm still very capable under the brakes, as you can see there, dive bombing into turn 9, but I'm losing out a lot on confidence through Corporate Hill. I had a big crash there at the beginning of 2023, and my confidence has dropped away there significantly. And especially coming back from the crash earlier this year, I'm being careful everywhere, reminding myself I have to go back to work on Monday. You can see there, despite that chap having the power on me down the back straight, I'm able to do him on the flip-flop between 10 and 11. And then he's able to cook me again down the straight into turn 1. Now that's not me attacking the chap, like he's out there doing his lap times, we just make it very differently. It was actually really good for me to have someone like that to be able to follow. It just helped me target my riding a bit better. Having other riders in front definitely helped me keep my focus on track and kind of where I needed to go, especially as my body fatigued. You're starting to see my lines vary quite a lot. That's just as my legs are fatiguing, and especially my right arm after the surgery to put the elbow back to the way it needed to be. My arm suffers with arm pump a little bit more than it did previously, so again, just adapting to that as well. Oof, that's such a hard chop. Just... Even though I'm suffering from a little bit of arm pump and maybe not being super confident on gear changes, I'm still managing to send moves like that into 9, and I'll tell you what, that brings me great joy, being able to still make maneuvers like that. There goes a Kawasaki ZX6. I think that's one of the Irish chaps. He started a bit further down the back of the grid and he was working his way through. You can hear there into turn 2, slow, deliberate gear changes, just bum, 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 compared to the normal rapid fire that I would do on the SV previously. Again, that's just flexibility in the ankle and fitness in being able to get it around under the lever and the quick tap through. This bike does have a very good clutch in it. Normally I'd rip through the gears, but the hand-eye foot coordination sort of thing wasn't working as well as it did previously. You can really hear, going up over corporate, I just don't have the confidence to get in the throttle over the top of the hill. Looking at the lap time data between my fastest lap, which is a 41 flat, and the fastest laps of this night, I'm losing upwards of about 1.2 seconds in that corner sequence alone. Coming into the last lap of the race, definitely starting to fatigue out. I just make a blatant shifting error there, going into turn 6, run quite wide. Again, hearing the poor shifting into turn 9, that's just fatigue. I'm wrecked, not just in my legs, but my upper body, and starting to mentally tire out as well. It's one of those things, you having ridden for 10 years on track prior to this, with the biggest gap only being probably 2 months, taking a full nearly 7 months off before getting back to the track, as well as suffering the injury and not doing any general fitness stuff otherwise, really is a massive setback. It's probably a bigger setback than I anticipated. A little bit frustrating, but at the end of the day, I'm still out really enjoying what we're doing. Yes, that's the first race back. Relief is probably what I can say I was feeling at the end of that one. I was very tired and very sore, but it was cool to be able to have gotten back on track and finished the race. Here we are, straight into race 2. I did in fact finish 11th, so I was one position further up the grid. Absolutely suck on that start, going straight into neutral instead of the second and losing a whole bunch of spots. and coming into turn 2 it kind of squeezes up. Now remembering bracket racing, we're all around about the same lap time, but very different skill sets. So turn 2 was a bit more of a melee than normal, so I was kind of being quite cautious going into there. As you can see, it's been nearly 12 months since we rode under lights. Some of the camera settings might not be as ideal as possible. We're going to be working on them for the remaining night series to make sure we have as crisp a picture as possible. What I will say, it's pretty cool to have come back to racing under lights. I absolutely love racing under lights with St. George. It's a whole different level of experience that it's pretty much unavailable anywhere else to this level in Australia or even the Southern Hemisphere. I believe Sepang is the only other track in the Southern Hemisphere that has full lighting for a bike rated track, so it's a pretty cool thing to be able to do. Again, here you can see that we're getting hosed on the straight, but again, 600s and 1000s that we're racing against. What's really cool is with the 677 motor back in the bike in pretty good condition, despite being upwards of 10 kilometers an hour slower off the last corner, we're getting to pretty reasonable top speeds down the straight. So once I get myself doing the correct thing in order to be able to maximize corner speed, this bike is going to be an absolute peach. Again, similarly to race 1, my first couple of laps here in race 2 are my best. I'm a bit more fresh, I haven't started to fatigue, and following these riders that I can kind of keep the hooks into helps me focus on my lines. Although some of those, I wouldn't say fears, but cautions that I'm taking, because, you know, this was the biggest crash, most affecting crash that I've ever had on track. With the Aprilia earlier this year, so I don't have the confidence back, and you can definitely see that in my riding. Except for when I pass people into turn 9. Oh, there's a big dust cloud and a yellow flag, or a yellow light. Unfortunately, that's our good friend Matt Franco. He had a fairly fast, very big crash on his R6 at the front of the field. Thankfully, he wasn't too badly injured, and the bike's it's probably a bit second-hand, but he was able to walk away. He's a little bit stiff and sore, but thankfully he's not too bad. Funnily enough, Matt has joined the Rawhide testing team, and he had some new Rawhide products on him there, and he certainly tested them. Oof, that chap's quite wide. One cool thing about racing under lights, and one thing that had to be mandated for it, is you've got the lighting system, and you can see there in the background the orange lights still flashing for Matt's crash. At this point, because turn 10, turn 11 where Matt crashed is a really fast place to come off, I was kind of quite worried for him and thinking that we were going to get a red flag, but Matt was able to get up, clear himself and the bike pretty quickly, and the race was able to continue. We've just been passed by this chap on a Daytona 675. Again, one of the things with bracket racing, I've said it before, everyone's kind of doing the same lap times, making it differently, and this guy was definitely making it differently. He had an interesting line into turn 9. We were able to talk to some of the other St. George staff who were able to go down. It was his first time moving from come try into the actual bracket racing itself. and give him a little bit of coaching, and his riding did improve throughout the rest of the night. So that was really cool. And one of the reasons that we're doing events like this with St. George is to get people into from track riding into racing, and then with the bracket racing help people hopefully improve their skill as they're riding in with others that, you know, have different skill sets to them. This race is starting to wind down, and as you can see they're making another big shifting error into turn 2. So we had actually resolved the mechanical issue that we were having with shifting with the old fatigued shift knuckle, but the old fatigued me was still making mistakes. And you might be able to see a bit of water running down the inside of the screen. So I noticed that on about the last lap, there was a bit of fluid on the screen. I thought maybe it was just a bit of residual brake fluid from the brake bleeding that we'd done. Unfortunately, it turned out to be an issue with the cooling system. It was a similar symptom to what made us take the engine out last year from the 677. At the end of the race, pulled back into the pits, did a quick inspection, realised that it could be maybe the radiator cap or the spring was quite shot in that, so maybe it was that. Had awesome help and encouragement from the crew. We had Andrew, David and Brendan from Rawhide. He pitched in as well, did a bit of work, checked a few things out, got the bike back together, and we were able to get back out for race 3. As you can see, we got just pipped to the line by that guy on the GSXR. It is what it is when it comes to bracket racing. If I hadn't made the mistake in shifting into turn 2, probably would have been able to keep a big enough gap. And at the end of the day, this is bracket racing and a fun return to racing for me, so I'm not too upset by it. Here we have the race 3 start. So I finished 12th in that last one. We're bound about the same lap times as we go. That was my best start of the night. It still wasn't the greatest start that I've had, but it is a little bit better. A couple of other people behind me, however, were getting better starts on R1s and other bigger bikes. David had a ripper. He's come screaming past me there. And then the melee into turn 2 ensues. You can see that water residue is still on the screen. We actually hadn't seen that it had made its way that far down on the screen, so we'd cleaned further up and sorted the rest of the bike out. We just didn't notice that bit. Oof, David taking a very defensive line there into turn 4, which opened him up for me to do my classic and one of my favourites, the old Philippe Philop between 4 and 5. Then I go defensive into 6, thinking that he was going to try to pass me, and the Jigsaw 1000 there got onto the brakes quite hard, so I had to make a decision, either brake really hard and maybe hit the guy, or just send it. So I sent it. And then we kind of get into position on track here, settling in with our lap time. As the rest of the field in front starts to stream away, there's not really anyone that challenges me too much from behind. We had a bit of that gap build in front of us, and the gap behind us stayed a bit steady. These first 2 or 3 laps were my best of the night. Netted a best lap of a 1:45.2, which I am absolutely stoked about, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. As I said at the beginning, I was hoping to get below a 150. And I had said to the team, look, if I get a 145, I'll be over the moon. And I'll tell you what, I was fairly well over the moon. Obviously, the issue with the bike and the cooling kind of put a bit of a dampener on it. And I probably threw me toys out the pram like a child. But realistically, looking at it, a 145 after 6 or 7 months off of track, let alone off of that bike, and with the injuries, actually really, really stoked. Pretty good base to start to build upon again. Moving into the 2024/25 Summer Night Series, so that's the 5th running of the Summer Night Series. We plan to enter all of those events on the Suzuki. Once we got the bike home and we were able to diagnose what the actual cause was of the heating issue, hopefully going into the night series for the remainder, the bike's going to be a weapon. So hopefully now we've resolved kind of the last few little niggling issues that we were having with the SV. The main work now is to come from me. Again, moving into the first round of the Summer Night Series, I'm going to be, again, aiming for about that 1:45 lap time. If I can consistently work on that for a whole race and then start stepping it down to the 44s and 43s, I'll be pretty happy with that. 43, 44, it's where we normally are in with the 600s for the Night Series. So I'll be pretty happy with us being able to do that. As you can see, once we got that bit of a gap, the gap in front started to build and the gap behind started to build. We were kind of just doing laps by ourselves. The lap times did drop off to 47s, 48s, and in all honesty, that's pretty fair considering my fitness level and concerns with the bike. And that is the end of race 3. Again, finishing about that 12th position, so we were hovering around that 11th, 12th. For each of the races. Pretty happy with that in all reality, considering we were against 600s and 1000s. All the things added up. I might have had a bit of tanty at the time, but you know, at the time emotions were running pretty high. Actually really stoked with how the night went. Those few issues besides. I have to say a massive thanks to the St. George Motorcycle Club for putting on another awesome event. The Come Try and Brackets is something new and interesting for the club. Again, moving ride day riders into racing is good for the sport. Massive thanks to all the marshals. Everyone volunteers their time on a Saturday night to come out and watch us idiots go and race, so huge thanks to them. And as always, thanks to the team, Carl, Andrew and David, and a big shout out to Brendan from Rawhide for coming out and saying g'day, showing us a few new products which are hopefully going to be announced soon, as well as actually helping us work on a motorbike, so that's pretty cool of him. So at the end of all that, it is great to be back on track. I had a whole bunch of fun out there spinning laps on the SV650 again. Didn't crash, which is a huge positive. Looking forward to next time. Hopefully see you out there.